like, okay. Some agents get very like set on maintaining their personal stats, like days on markets and things like that. We have a lot of stuff that flies off the market. We have stuff that, you know, as long as we're having conversations and we're not letting things drag out unnecessarily without speaking to our clients, we'll do what they want because ultimately we work for them. But there are some that it just, you know, guts you and you're like, I told you this was going to be like this. But anyway, that's an ego thing, not really anything more than that. So
I know I'm going through the same thing right now, and it's, you know, and I made it very clear. We listed it during the pandemic, and I said nobody wants to be in buildings right now. I would sit on this. You paid cash. There's nothing going on. Let's just sit on it. She insisted on listing it. We had a buyer yank us around, fell apart. We took it off to reset everything. And I told her, let's wait until the spring. And nope, she wanted to list it again after Labor Day. And we're going through the same thing. I've had no showings.
yeah,
It's a great location. It's a great property. And now she's acting like I'm not doing anything, even though I prepared her well in advance that things weren't selling and we might not see anything until the end of the year. And yeah, it's really tough right now.
Yeah.
Well, there's other things you can show, like similar properties. You can look at the comparable properties and you can see what the showing stats look like for those. And then if they look like they're in your favor, you can show them to your client and be like, look, this isn't just us, this is across the board. I bet that it probably is like that. I can show you that too while we're on here. But let me jump in so we can keep moving. So we all know what Bright, the homepage, looks like. I know a lot of people probably come in here and just jump right to a tab that they like, but there's a lot of good data on this first page. So there's a standard market watch here that is just set up for you. You can change it around to be very specific to what you're looking for. I have mine set to just Philadelphia County. And then I have it residential in the last 24 hours. This is really cool because you can quickly see like anything coming soon. We have 73 new active, and you can kind of click in and get a quick glance of things that are going on. I know when I started, I would look at this religiously, and a lot of the new active stuff I would use as content, or the coming soon stuff I would use as content, and I would go preview these properties and put them on my social media, and it looked like I knew, you know, all the new things that were happening in the market before everyone else. So that was good. So I like that one. But then the hot sheets I think is really cool. So a lot of us, I don't know if you guys do this, but some of like my higher end clients are super particular clients who only want one thing and that's it. They don't want to see everything. You can either set up a concierge search or you can set up a hot sheet if you don't feel like getting emailed every day about new listings. So you can set this up. It comes with the default setting, but then you can set it up for however you want. So like this one, if my parents are looking for land, a specific, you know, 10 acres plus in a specific area. So I set the criteria and then I look at this, you know, regularly just to see if things are coming up. So that's a good one. And to edit them so they're specific to you, because right now the default settings on any of these come with the full MLS area. Well, that's like Virginia, some Maryland, some like that doesn't help us. But you can be super specific. Like this client here is looking specifically in Fairmount. So, and we've had some like heartbreakers. So I have her set up just to ping me every time something comes new. Was there a question or someone yawning or? Okay. So this is just the default residential. I switched it to Philadelphia. So this is all the coming soons, but you can even narrow down by price. If we go back, you can go by price, beds and baths. I'll just show you how to set one up. So that way I'm not just talking hypothetically. So if you go into manage, we're in residential now, you can reset the criteria. That will put it back to the factory system defaults, or you can edit the criteria. So I have mine selected to coming soon, new active, back to active, and price decrease. You can even change the structure type. So, and you can rename all these. So you can have like go ahead. Oh, someone's just not muted. Okay. You can change the structure type. So if your client only wants end of unit row, or they want, you know, only a detached structure or whatever, you can change all that. You can set your price, you can set your beds, baths, basically everything you can do in a normal search, but it's just set up on a hot sheet for you. So it's a saved and it's a quick click for you on your homepage. So I really like those. When I jump into Bright, I kind of comb through those really quickly. Any questions on those? No? Okay. So I'll show you the other report I really like. This is another one that you can use, for your party tricks and commanding your information with people who try to challenge you all the time. So if you go to market, there's a bunch of reports here, and Brittany's going to review a few as well. If you haven't looked at these, you should go in and play around with them. Each of them has a slightly different twist to them, a lot of really rich information, and understanding the information is step one. And then really digging into the information is helpful because then you can kind of manipulate what you show or what you talk about with your clients. Also, if you're checking out your competition, I always like to go to agent and office production. So there's always those agents that are like, I've been doing this for 22 years. And I'm like, okay, Karen. So I look Karen up, and Karen's done, a third of the sales we've done in our 3 years of business. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I can like put that to bed really quickly. So um, it's really hard to know if I'm being funny because no, I can't hear anyone. I'm making jokes and no one's laughing.
I'm laughing.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Now I'm laughing with you, B.
All right. Thank you. All right. So the one I was going to show you was the industry watch. And I think this one was really helpful when I was on Dana's panel because people were asking very specific questions about certain zip codes and their performance. So if you go into here and you can select, these are all the Bright MLS areas that are served. There's quite a lot, obviously, but if you go, I did Philadelphia County, and you can go by, whatever quarter you want. So I just grabbed the most Q3 of 2021. I already did this, so I'll just pull that one up for you. Maybe if I can get it there. Yeah, this one. There we go. Can you all see that? Yes, okay. So this is what happens when I ran that industry watch for Q3 in Philadelphia County. So it breaks down median sales prices for Q3, and it also tells you the year change. So from Q3 of 2020, we're up 11.6% in sales price. I think when I started in 2017, the median sales price in Philadelphia was $250. So that's pretty great. And then it obviously breaks it down even further, goes into closed sales, like the actual number of closed sales, how many are for sale currently. We're down 32.3% from this time last year, which is in line with everything we're seeing in the market, right? There's just not enough inventory, even though it's slowly creeping up within this year. And you can see that here. This is showing the trend line that I was just talking about inventory change. And then if you go down here, it breaks you down into zip codes even further. So I think someone had specifically asked about the West Philly one at that time, but you can look at the zip codes and it will tell you median sales price, the year one change. So that's from Q3 last year to Q3 this year. And then even further, average property closed sales. Sorry, I have to zoom over a little. There we go. Closed sales, average property marketing period. So you can see days on market specific to that zip code. These are just really awesome, quick facts and stats to have. So if you know that like your investor clients like really specializes in one area, you can say like, hey, Q3 this year, we have this many, it's averaged this many days on market, which is this much higher than this time last year. So things are just moving slower, right? You can have very intelligent conversations with this data. So that's why I like it. Any questions on this report specifically or anything else I've talked about?
This is also great, like if you want to be the local expert, right? Like you can really dive deep. Even if you're a brand new agent, you have access to all this info. You can take it to a listing appointment. You can take it to your buyer consults, and you're going to look like a rock star.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, like this is big picture information. This is each zip code, but it's all of the deals within that zip code, residential deals within that zip code specifically. But that could be a huge wide range of price point, which might not apply to you or your client or what you're looking at. So then Brittany will show you how to drill down even further. I'm going to stop sharing and then let Brittany take over.
Oh.
Uh-oh. You ready?
Ready. I'm just gonna share the screen.
She was probably answering emails, not paying attention.
Were you looking at me? My eyes were glued to the screen. I was not fidgeting or moving. Thank you. Hold on. Share screen. There you go. Can everybody see?
Yeah.
Cool.
Can you switch it to share tab instead of your full screen? That might be a little bit bigger.
How about that?
Better, thank you.
Better, thank you. All right, cool. So to Britt's point, yeah, Bright has a lot of fun tools, and I've been leaning into them more now than ever, both on the grander scale, but also on the more granular scale, because we find ourselves defending our listings and our dialogues a lot more frequently now with this market that is ever changing. So I'll show you a few things that we've been leveraging when supporting like our dialogues. A few things that we talked about earlier regarding like pricing and being tighter with comps, which I'll get into using, I'll show you guys how we run comps. But one of my go-to sayings that I found that sellers respond to really well is, hey, listen, like the more that you guys make, the more that we make, right? So we're always happy to list at a higher price. However, the market is just extremely sensitive right now, especially in the Philadelphia market. We're not comparing ourselves to Montgomery County, Delaware County, or Bucks County. Inventory is just moving a lot faster out there. Philadelphia is a lot more sensitive. One specific example that we can give to you is it Carpenter Street? We just closed on it finally yesterday. It's a listing that we have been working on since January of this year still. And we helped our clients. It was actually a listing that was previously listed with another brokerage. They came to us as a referral, and we helped them make a few improvements on a staging, but also like a cosmetic front when it came to refreshing the listing and also commanding a new price. So we ended up renovating that property lightly with them, coordinating all the contractors. Once we put it on the market, we had a great response. We priced it appropriately. That buyer got cold feet and bailed. And it was probably on the market for 75 days before we got the new buyer in place. But what Britt mentioned is communication really becomes paramount in the expectation setting, but also just staying ahead of the curve and the dialogues and making sure that you're staying in front of your clients. So we ended up getting that finally under agreement, but just managing the expectations, managing the emotions, managing the stress that we know our clients were experiencing, but also understanding that we were evaluating and looking at numbers weekly with them, sharing some market stats stating, hey, like we are priced appropriately, but there might be some nuances, the location, we were taking feedback, we were aggregating data from them, a few of which are these reports, which I'll stop babbling very shortly and start sharing. But all is to say, communication and sharing like this data is so quintessential when it comes to, again, like the client experience and managing the expectations, but also justifying price improvements and, you know, things to help move the needle. So under market, Britt shared Industry Watch. Another one that I like to use is Market Stats. This comes in handy both on listing appointments, but also weekly updates. I typically share listing updates and activity reports with clients on Fridays. So I like to go back about a month or two when it comes to the date range. I don't like to do anything wider, only because what happened in May is totally different than what's happening now in October. So let's say we're looking at properties or going on a listing appointment that is around maybe 400K plus or minus. I like to stay between 350 and 450, or if you think the listing is going to be 375, maybe stay between 350 and 400. I'll shrink it a little bit more. And you can search by zip code. So I'll go 19147. You can also change property types if you'd like. But this report will give you some higher level numbers regarding activity in the area. So When I do go on listing appointments, I make it abundantly clear that I'm not going to share very specific numbers regarding the house. I always tell them I'm not discussing price. That first listing appointment is my information gathering phase. So phase one, after I take in information, I walk the property, we discuss improvements or areas of improvement. We discuss staging, we discuss the nuances and quirks of a property. Then I go back and I take that information and I apply it to this or something along one of these reports when I'm pulling comps and outputting a recommended listing price. But I will bring market stats with me so they have a snapshot. And again, to Dana's point, it'll make you appear as an expert. And it definitely supports some comping and some additional data that they might ask while you're there at the listing appointment.
Can you point out some of the numbers on here that you really look at? Because I know which ones I can look at and I can talk about it, but like show them like exactly what the info on this report is.
Yeah, so days on market is one that I focus on mostly because I do know that it's always people want to know, sellers want to know how much they're going to make and how quickly. So I always look at average sales price or median sold price, and then I'll look at days on market. So they have an accurate snapshot of what's happening in their zip code. Now, again, the nuance, this is an average and generalized sheet. So I always say take it with a grain of salt. I'll go back, run comps and give you a more specific number. However, this sold price, median, average, and days on market are a few things. I don't know if this has any additional stuff on it. No, it doesn't. There's also cumulative days on market too, which is if the property's been listed previously by another brokerage and you're taking over the listing, there's a cumulative days on market, which is different from the average days on market. And then you could see the pended number of properties, how much inventory there currently is, various listing prices, total volume that's moving through that zip code, and then of course timeline. So it gives you a pretty decent snapshot of what's happening in that zip code. And then again, you can go back and run very specific comps. So any questions?
I just want to chime in. That inventory accumulation down there at the bottom, if you, so that actually shows you how many months it'll take to sell the amount of inventory that's on the market right now in that zip code within that price range. So current month, November 2021, it'll take 10.8 months to sell off all the inventory that's currently listed in there based off of how much we're accumulating every month and what's moving. So that's a really, really big indicator of how the market is balanced. So a balanced market is 6 months. That's a true balanced market. A seller's market is anything less than 6 months, and a buyer's market is anything larger than 6 months. That means there's more inventory than there are buyers. So the buyers have more of an advantage in this market right now. So when you're talking to your seller about, or your buyer, because I think a lot of people in here probably work with more buyers than sellers, but when you're talking about inventory accumulation, or you want to know if it's a buyer's market or a seller's market, you have to be super granular in your zip code and your price range to be able to say if it's a buyer's or seller's market, because it's different. So if Brittany had run this for another zip code, this inventory accumulation would be very different. So if we ran it for all of Philadelphia, it might show a different picture than it would Fishtown or Point Breeze, or right. And so that's a very important indicator of how things are moving within a market. If you have a beautiful, we like to call them the Instagrammable homes, that number out the window, doesn't matter, because people are going to buy it because it's an amazing looking home. But that's more of an anomaly than a norm. So I would say, to me, that's probably one of the biggest ones on that document that I like to point out. And I don't think a lot of people talk about balanced markets and inventory accumulation a lot, but that's a really great indicator of how long it's going to take to sell your home, or to what negotiating power you have on the buyer side.
You'll hear people talk about absorption rates, and that's what that
Same thing
is. Yeah, they're synonymous. So yeah, check out these numbers. You can have various dialogues around each new listings. You know, how many competitors do we have? It's all rich information. So another one I like to use, and I find myself using this a little bit more specifically with difficult listings. This will give you like a snapshot more so of what's happening within like buyer portals more or less, and how buyers are responding to inventory that comes their way. So let's call it price range 450 to 550. I had to do this for one of my East Falls sellers, which East Falls is such a tight market. You are working with very little data, so there's like little to interpret. So you do have to go wider, and this is one of those circumstances. We'll call it a 3-bedroom, and then we'll search by zip code again. And we'll go wide, and we'll go 19147 and see what's happening down there. You can also search by radius. So if you did want to tighten it up a little bit and use a specific address because you're running comps, maybe you're just curious about a zip code because maybe you're, meeting up with some family members in the area or friends, search by area, search by school district. The little screen's in the way, and I can't click on the button here. There we go. But this tool recently helped me defend a pricing improvement strategy recently with a seller, which was helpful. And people just like data. I think it's easier to illustrate to our clients what's happening than just tell them. And again, it just goes back to making you look more of like an expert in your field. So there's a lot on here. I recommend everybody give this, if you haven't already, give this tool a shot. Again, it's Market Performance Report. The first time I used it, I had to sit with it a little bit because it's a little bit complex, but take some time, flip through it. There's a lot of good information here. So it does break down the criteria that you're searching, the current active competitors in the area, how long they've been on market for. So in 19147 and in this price range, days on market 0 to 45, there's 15. Things aren't sitting, it seems, right? Because we have some new listings and then a lot less as the days on market accumulate. You can see what's going on, new active with contract within, the previous weeks up to the current. You can see how many appointments have been scheduled before a contract is written. So on average in 19147, we'll call it 5, we'll round it up. You can see how many buyers are favoriting things in their portal. Again, it gives you a nice little snapshot of how the market is engaging with listings virtually. You can see how many scheduled appointments occur before each average listing. Pens, in this case, we've got about 5 going on this past week. What week are we in? Yeah, 11. What else? Agents scheduling appointments. You could see how much activity is going on there. Another tool that's not limited to Bright, but Britt and I like to reverse prospect and showing time as well. If you are trying to reverse prospect a little bit and gather some more information for your seller, again, data, showing time will actually show you which agents are showing what in the nearby your respective listing, and you can reach out, but you can also see activity that's occurring and see how many showings are scheduled on your competitors' listings. So that's a little sidebar note, which I encourage you to explore as well. And then you can see average appointments before contract versus days on market. So you could see how long they're truly taking to pend. There's information about how many buyers are, being selective, possibilities, what don't they like, what do they like. And yeah, it's a pretty neat tool that gives you just some different information to chew on and share with your sellers. So the beauty of all these things is kind of pick your poison. What Britt already mentioned, like you can manipulate your dialogue and show what you need to help defend what you're trying to state or prove. So they're 2 really good tools that we refer to quite often, but there's quite a bit in here. So take your time, flip through them and see what works best for you. Real quick, I'll work on some comps with you guys. So does anybody have any questions around the market performance, or did all that make sense? Not all at once, guys. So
maybe someone has a property they want us to comp. Anyone?
That's a good idea.
No? Okay.
No? All right. So I'll do 1320.
You can pick on someone if you want to, Britt or Brittany.
No, we don't like being called out, so we won't call someone else out.
No.
While Brittany's doing this, I can tell you, it's a funny thing to say, like, you can kind of manipulate the data. It sounds like so like maniacal, but it's not. Like, when data is amazing because there's so much of it and it's so rich, and everyone does this, right? In gambling, in stock markets, we basically are salespeople who market a lot, and you need to know all the information and be quick with it so that you can have these intelligent conversations, but that you can also be able to manipulate it, as Brittany was saying, like, to help in your argument or discussion. So all of that data that Brittany just showed us isn't going to be helpful to every conversation, but like certain pieces of it are. And same with what I was showing you earlier, like certain pieces of that information are really helpful in discussions, or persuading someone to work with you, or telling someone why you need a price adjustment, or justifying your pricing strategy with a buyer and then pitching that low bid to the listing agent, right? Like, if you can pull all this together and have an intelligent conversation around it, people don't question your authority because you are the authority, right? And you don't sound like you're guessing. And I hate when people are like, well, I think, and it's like, well, what do the numbers show? Do the numbers show that? If they don't show that, then what you think doesn't matter at that point, right? There isn't an emotion to this when we're purely looking at the numbers. And I think that's why I like it so much, because as Brittany can tell you, I'm not a very emotional person. So the numbers take the emotion out of it, and they allow us just to speak in facts, which I think is really important, and maybe more so when you're dealing with investors and sellers than buyers. But it's good to learn how to look at these numbers, even if you don't use them daily, because they'll always support you. And like Dana said, they don't lie.
Looks like Abby asked if you wouldn't mind. She's working with an investor going to be listing a rental property. How you figure out how to list for a rental, what the rental price is. So comping rentals, 337 Westmaster.
Sure.
If you want, I mean, it's the same approach as like a residential listing. You're just looking at residential rental stats. So if you want to pass along the address, I'm happy to help you.
She did. Let's just do it. It's 337 Westmaster.
All right. Nice. Oh, Britt and I looked at this.
Yep, we did.
Yes, it's a real cutie. Sorry I had to go off video. I'm headed out the door right now, but thank you for your help.
It's quite all right. Yeah, so when comping any property, rental, residential, sale, what I do is I first pull up the property itself. So I have all the stats in front of me. And then I pull up either lease or residential sale, whatever you're trying to comp. And I keep the radius pretty tight, depending on how many results we get. So I always start with 0.1 mile radius, because the tighter that you can comp, the more accurate your numbers are. And it's all about precision, especially again in today's market. I always joke with my sellers and say there's 15 reasons why a property doesn't sell or get rented. The first is price, and the remaining 14 are price. So if you could be precise with your numbers from the jump. Now, sometimes again, that is nuanced. There's other like quirks within a property that might make it a little bit more difficult of a sell, or, it might sit a little bit longer because it's unique. But again, that does funnel back into pricing and expectation setting, but you can pull all this data as you go. But keep your comps tight, as tight as you can. Start with 0.1 mile radius as if you see enough results. So going back to the listing itself, so we're working with a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath. I look at, and if anybody wants me to, I'm happy to like download an MLS sheet and like highlight some of the areas that I focus on. Not limited to beds, bath, and square footage. I do also look at the taxes. In this case, it's different because it's a rental. We're not listing this for sale, and we're not going to be sensitive to taxes, but throwing that in there, I always pay attention to that number as well. And then of course the amenities, but we'll check out that very shortly. So we've got a 3-bedroom.
So Brittany checked off coming soon, active, active under contract, pending and closed.
Yep,
We pull all
sorry.
of those so we can see current inventory, things that have gone under contract. Although the pending is not as important as the closed numbers when you're comping, because we don't know what it's actually going to close at if it's still listed as pending, and then closed. I like the pending if you have something that's maybe a little bit higher, but that pended one flew off the market. And then actually what I wind up doing is picking up the phone and calling the listing agent and say, hey, I'm about to go under contract on this, curious what yours appraised for. And usually if they're far along enough in the process, they'll give you that information and say, oh, it appraised for this. And then I know if theirs is closing before mine, then we can use it as a direct comp once it closes. So it's
Yeah.
really, creating those relationships is huge in this business too. So
Yeah, don't be afraid to pick up the phone. And the beauty of building rapport and reputation within the business, people typically give you some more information to work with, especially if you say, hey, I'm running comps, like I'm not looking to bring a buyer, something to that effect. They're usually likely to share and volunteer information and not hold the cards so close to their chest. So to Britt's point, I check off coming soon, active, active under contract, pending and closed. I don't want to look at withdrawn because that's been removed, expired, canceled, temp off. Again, they're essentially inactive. I look at the bedrooms, I look at the total bathrooms. So we have 1.5. I'll do a range. So I still want to include one bedroom or one bathroom comps, as well as potentially 2 full bathrooms. The 2 full bathrooms, or the 1 to 2 bathrooms, will also include half baths. So you can check out different structure types. So in this case, we are looking at single families. I'm not going to check anything off because I do want to see what kind of results there are. But if you're maybe concentrating in Old City and you want to look at just condos, for example, you can check off highlight unit flat, or mostly unit flat, but I'm going to uncheck that for all intents and purposes. You can also look at properties that have parking spaces if that's something that is appropriate. You can look at furnished. We don't come across that all too frequently. You can look at rentals that do have pet restrictions. If Abby's client was adamant about no pets, we can check off breed restrictions case by case, or no pets at all over here, so on and so forth. And you can see also when listing terms begin, sign date, lease. You could just pull quite a bit of information in here. I typically leave this open only because I find that agents don't actually put in like the availability date as often as you think they would and should. But so I leave it kind of open again until I decide that I need more comps to work with. So with all of that said, if you go down here, you're going to see that there are 0 matches currently. So what I'm going to do is expand it to that 0.25 mile radius, which then gives me 9 matches. Click on results. And you can see I always sort the price from, I always make it ascend. So that way you can see on a sliding scale and on a more organized scale what's occurring in the neighborhood. So it'll give you like a little dashboard of properties with 3 beds. You can see how many baths they have, what kind of property they are, and then of course the respective prices. So, and you can see how far away they are from the subject property. So I typically flip through all the listings, right? We have, the lower end where it's $1,325 a month, all the way up to $2,600 a month. I always compare cosmetics and of course amenities. So I don't know, Abby, can you still hear me?
I think she had a run.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, I can hear
just
you.
kidding.
Thank you.
Have you had the
I'm
dialogue?
just
Oh, it's okay.
sorry.
It's quite all right. I think there's a little bit of a lag. But have you had a dialogue around, and this is like a key question that I like to ask my sellers and my landlords, like what number do you have in mind, right? So have you discussed with your client yet a number that would make sense to them?
Yes. So at minimum, bare minimum 1,800. But if she could get close to 2,000, that would be amazing.
Great. And this is an example of, I'm happy to run numbers and give like the more realistic price if it's not already aligned with like the number that the seller or landlord wants. But it introduces the idea of, okay, the more that you make, the more that I make, right? And I want to help you achieve your goal price if it's not too unrealistic, right? So if she can hit $2,000 a month, what does that look like? So here are some healthy numbers. So I would start, right? Like it's evident that these two properties aren't super comps because of just cosmetic condition.
Yep.
And also amenities. So we have like $1,600 a month. It's absolutely a larger property. Doesn't have any central air, and I believe yours does. Yes, it does. And also, do you have any outdoor space? Let me see.
A little patio.
Little patio. Oh, this house was so cute. Britt and I like consider.
That flamingo bathroom is so fun.
It's like, and look at the little
Yeah, right.
bedroom space. Oh, that's a cute little back patio. So
Yeah.
moving on up, we're entering into an appropriate range. So you can see this is getting a little bit more comparable. It does have a much larger rear patio space, so take that into consideration. This only has one full bath, doesn't have a half bath, no cooling. So again, I would say that we're starting to creep into a territory that makes sense to your client. Pale floor, a little more lackluster for sure. Checking it out, we do have central air. I keep going back to that because that's just like one of the key amenities that I feel like tenants always evaluate. The size is a little bit
Also
off, but I think
laundry.
laundry too.
Yeah.
This one is front and center, probably for that reason. But this is a unit, so take into consideration that too. So this was leased for $1,849, or no, I'm sorry, this is still active. They're coming down in price. I would argue it's probably because of unit size. They're trying to achieve a higher number, and this is a flat, but I am just guessing. I always take things with a grain of salt until I physically walk a property with a client. What else can I tell you? And this was closed at 1975 after, I always look at days on market, after 40 days on market, so you can set the expectation of this is about the turnaround time. It does have central air. It's a very large property compared to our subject. So Abby, do you know if this is actually 812 square feet, or do you feel like it's
So
larger?
we've been discussing that. We do think it's a little larger. I think it's at least 1,000, could be up to 1,100. Tough to say. I wish I had an accurate number around that.
I mean, the
I don't
photos
think it's
make it
actually
look like
800.
pretty large, although
Yeah,
in
the
photos,
third floor is
that
like
looks like a
really
kite.
significant square footage.
If they had an appraisal done, the appraiser
Okay.
would have measured all the rooms and given us
Ooh,
square
okay, we
footage.
haven't had appraisal yet.
So
So
once
Okay.
you
good to know.
get that report, you'll be able to see what the appraiser is calling it at. And that's going to be like a key piece of data to work with when you're running more. Because you'll absolutely, when are you slated to settle?
The 9th of December.
Okay, so when that time comes, you're going to run new comps because there's going to be new comps for you to work with. But I would say something of that scale and cosmetic like condition. It's got some curb appeal and it has some like sweet amenities,
Yeah.
and the location is great. I always take into consideration the location. Like I look at Google Maps to see what's going on in the area. I know that they have
it's
popping
like
up right there.
it's steps to Reanimator coffee, which I feel like is a big perk.
Oh, you speak in my language. You've got Eva Pizzeria, you've got American Street, which has like all of the new joints cropping up, and then you're still only a stone's throw from Front Street and Frankfurt Avenue. So I would say the curb appeal of the property, the amenities, and the location and proximity to things. I would honestly push it for like that 2K rent and see how the market responds. As always, like timing is everything. So I would like pull these comps. If you want it to go wider, you could, just to pull some more data, but I think like you have a healthy enough a healthy amount of comps to work with. Like if this was closed at 2550, you do have, I think that the key thing to look at would be square footage, but you might be able to swing the 2K price point that the seller's trying to dictate. But if you don't see showings within the first 2 to 3 weeks, then you have a dialogue. We might be priced too high, right?
Right.
And that's where you stay privy to the information and the residential activity. That way you can continue funneling that information to the seller weekly. People just want to be informed and like be, kept abreast when it comes to their properties and activities and what's going on in the neighborhood. And that's where you come in. So just keep like spoon feeding them what you can, and you'll land where you need to. Yeah.
Another
And if you
strategy
can-
I do too is if that 2,000 doesn't work,
Yeah.
we talk about, okay,
Mhm.
can we reduce it to maybe 1950, but require an 18-month lease or 2-year
Yeah.
lease, so that they
Right.
are kind of in the back end getting some of that money back. And then landlords tend to be
Yeah.
a little bit more willing to do a price drop.
Yeah.
Sure.
The other thing you should try to do, Abby, if you haven't already, is approach the listing agent about buying the photos from them, because it's part of what makes it so appealing
Okay,
is how,
yes. I was curious about that. You can purchase. Okay.
yeah. So I
see.
would just reach out to the listing
Because-
agent and say, hey, this is going to be an investment property for my clients. Can we purchase the photos from you? And usually they just sell it to you at whatever they paid to have the photos done.
Yep.
Some sellers get weird about having their stuff online, but
Sure.
unfortunately, unless the listing agent removes the pictures before it closes, their photos
Mhm.
are all over the damn internet. So it doesn't matter at
Right.
that point.
Okay. Okay, good to know. Super
Yeah.
helpful. Thank you so much.
One thing that I've done in the past too, not every seller is open to this. I've worked with a lot of either already vacant properties or like very unique situations where the sellers were open to allowing my client to list the property for rent like a week prior to settlement, just to kind of like save some days on market.
Right.
So not always, it's very
Yep.
unlikely. Yeah.
Technically, that's against Bright rules, just so you know.
Well, times have
Gotcha.
changed. Yeah, here we go. Britt always keeps me in check. She's like, Nettles, you can't do that. I'm like, oh, fuck. But I hope that's helpful. That is at least how you
Super
learn,
helpful.
yeah, residential lease comps. The same thing with sales. Again, like I'll do one little quick run through with you guys, unless you're done hearing me talk. But 1329 Clarion Street, what is happening? Is a property that we have for sale right now. Britt, is there anything that I do differently from you? Britt and I do things like very differently sometimes. So is there anything that I'm doing that I haven't mentioned?
I just like to look at the results statistics once I've narrowed my comps down. I know you do that, but you didn't show that. So
Yeah. Another thing I use too is, has anybody heard of RPR? It's Realtor Property Resource. So this is actually a pretty cool tool. Shout out to Jack Barry for like showing me technology when I first got started, but it's a tool I actually refer back to cross-reference my number. So I always do a gut check, like when I am running comps. So let's say, you ran comps on Clarion Street, which I was just about to show you. And I feel like 380 is like the healthy number, right? I go back to RPR and it'll give you a snapshot of what's happening. And this is like a really great tool to have when you are in like the heat of a moment, right? When somebody maybe asks you, hey, what do you think my house is worth? And you're like, I don't know, man, like I haven't even stepped foot in your house, right? But this is actually a tool that is syndicated and powered by Bright. So a lot of the information is very accurate. You can download the tool to your phone. You can plug in an address and it's going to output like really quick comps for you and like a what is this? What is it? What does the R stand for? Retail value. I forget what that's called.
retail market value.
Retail,
No.
I don't know. I have it backwards in my head. But anyway, it's like an estimated market value. So this number, like again, gut check, I feel like is very much inflated because again, it's pulling a lot of properties in the 19147 area and not taking into account like all of the nuanced information. There's a confidence meter down here. So it's like 4 out of 5 stars. If it's confident, then gives me a little bit more confidence, but I'll show this like to somebody who asks me just like on the fly, how much do you think my house is worth? I usually see that as it's always a listing appointment opportunity. Take it, set up an appointment, say, hey, like this is what is getting output based on activity in your area, but I would love to come walk your house. That way I can go back, run comps and dial it in and give you a more concrete and accurate number. So this is a tool that I really like to use. In addition, we hate to like state it, but we know that consumers are using Zillow, Trulia, Redfin. So we'll also go back to those third-party websites, type in the address and see what Zillow is like estimating, and same thing with Redfin, because that's oftentimes influencing a seller's opinion or a buyer's opinion of price. So we take in that third-party information as well, aside from just like the cold, hard data that we're pulling from Britt. So just running comps one last time and very quickly.
How did you get to the RPR or the RPR? How did you get to that?
It's rpr.com, or I'm sorry, NAR. Here, I'll drop it in the NAR. RPR. I'll drop it in the chat for you.
Is it the same login as your Britt login?
No.
Oh,
You have to
it's your NAR login.
Okay.
Yeah, and download the app too. Again, it's just like a helpful tool and point of reference. It's really rare and uncommon that I do have somebody like pull me and say, how much is my house worth? And I actually use this, but it is just like a nice checkpoint when you're running comps. Oops, pending. So again, I really like to elect coming soon, active, active under contract, pending, and closed. I know that Clarion is a 3-bedroom, so I'm typically only pulling 3 bedrooms. I know that it is a 1-bed bathroom home, but I'll still pull in 1 to 2 bathrooms just to give me a little bit more information to work with.
Nettles, are you reducing your closed days currently?
What do you mean?
Your range right now, you have 0 to 180. Are you tightening those?
Oh yeah, hi, thanks for calling that out.
You're welcome.
So
That's what we were talking about earlier about the
Yeah.
market's not the same as it was 6 months ago. So
Yeah.
we've been shrinking those down to 2 or 3 months. Or,
Yeah, like
so
60 to 90. I'll go
Yeah.
90 for context sake, but just keep that in mind. We are shrinking the data, so that way we're staying tighter, not only with the radius, but also the days on market and what's happened the previous few months. We don't want 6 months anymore because we're in an entirely different market. So price range, I'll typically do anywhere. So I know that this is going to be listed around like the 375 mark. So I pulled in 350 to 450. You can see what's going on in that range. You can also leave it wide open if you want to flip through just inventory and then narrow it down. I know that there's no central air. You can elect yes or no if you want to. Again, I try to leave it a little bit open and then I narrow it down based on results the first go around. And in this case, there's mostly active, which I don't really want to use because we don't know that price. So what I'm going to do is go back to criteria, expand the radius a little bit, and then narrow it down. And I'll typically shrink the price range too. So 300 to 450. Just to get rid of some of the more luxurious or not so luxurious properties that aren't super comparable. So you can also see, right, there's not too much active or not too much sold to work with. So in this case, what I might do is go back and adjust my time period again to 180 just to see what we're working with there. And you have to still take these properties with a grain of salt and really see when they did close, because we're looking at now May of last year, which is completely different. So our point is try to use what you can pull in the data. Just be completely sensitive to like what you're evaluating and what you're sharing with your sellers. And then once you narrow down a few properties, let's say this 1311 Dickinson is not quite a great comp for our Clarion property, and I'll show you why in a minute here. Aesthetically, it's just a completely different house. We did have this staged, by the way, so a little important detail and thing to recommend when listing your properties. You could do virtual or physical staging. We've always seen a better return and much more activity when a property is staged. And there's some stats on NAR regarding staging as well, the rate of return. So this is a little bit of an older property, but I am going to pull it in because of dimensions. If you, aside from taxes, there's another dimension that I do include, and that's lot size, because I want to see how wide the property is. So I've got 15 by 51, just to ensure that we're comparing similar properties. This is a lot deeper lot, which means that it might be a larger house, or might have it definitely has a larger footprint, but it might have a larger backyard. In this case, ours is actually a little bit larger and more functional. So that's a little bit of a nuance. You're not necessarily comparing apples to apples, but they are similar. So just to wrap this up though, let me just pull a few random properties for us to show you what we typically do. Britt already called it out, but the result stats is something that we use when recommending our pricing strategy to sellers. So let's say that these are the comps that we end up using. Result stats, click at the bottom. You can also produce a CMA using this button, but we like using the result stats in a pinch, and it will pull a lot of the quick stats down here. I typically highlight the average sales price, the average days on market, but it'll give you the higher level stats of every home that's either closed, pended, under contract, or active. And you can see the days on market. This has been on for 152, so one number might skew the rest, but you can interpret it and help the seller digest it. So I think that's all we got. Any questions?
Quiet bunch this morning.
I know. Shall I stop screen sharing?
Yeah.
It's been very informative. I learned some new tricks on some of the reports that I hadn't utilized yet, so I really appreciate that.
Good. I'm glad. How do I stop sharing? Yeah, if anybody wants to do like one-on-one, like comping together, I'm more than happy to assist anytime, and it goes for Britt as well. So,
Well, thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks, ladies.
really quiet
Yeah.
bunch. Did everybody
That's
have
all right.
coffee today? I know.
Our minds are blown. We're like, oh my God. I have like a million notes over here. I'm like, I don't do this. I don't do this.
Oh, well, thanks, Dana. We're glad it was helpful.
And guys, this will be uploaded to our Keller Williams Philadelphia YouTube channel. So you will be able to go back and rewatch. So that way, if you did miss some pieces of it, don't worry. It's not gone forever.
Yeah, we did have a little Zoom glitch at the beginning. It didn't automatically record for some reason. So I'm sure you heard it say recording in progress, like in a weird position on here. But yeah, it'll be uploaded by Monday. So
That means it missed all of my jokes.
It missed our banter. The banter is the best part.
sorry, Britt, but I did actually have a bunch of requests, emails, and texts asking for the recording of this. So just people who couldn't make it at this specific time. But thank you both so much for hosting.
Always happy to.
Anytime.
Thanks, ladies. And thank you guys for joining us.
See ya.
Bye, friends.